Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be among you distinguished academicians and scholars to discuss some dimensions of the Islamic awakening movement, with special attention to the new development in the Middle East and the Arab world. Today, I would like to present a conceptual framework for the better understanding of what is happening today in the Islamic Arab countries, particularly, and the world in general. In this way, I would like to introduce, and due to the restriction of time, only touch upon my own development theory of clash against domination, which I have put forward a few years ago to explain the current uprising of the suppressed people of the region. In the aftermath of the rapid and multidimensional developments in the Middle East and North African region, and particularly in the key Islamic Arabic countries, and also as a result of the occurring Islamic awakening in combating the domestic and foreign domination in these countries, which most experts contemplate it as a reflection of the main messages of the Islamic Revolution of Iran. The Middle East region has faced new conditions and embraces new characteristics which obviously affect the current and future structures and equation of the international system. Many scholars and analysts believe that these changes are so significant to the extent that will result in a new geopolitical culture in the Middle East. However, the key question here is, how can we interpret and explain the domino events of the region in a meaningful way? My clear answer to this very question is, will of the nation to clash against domination, nationally and internationally. In the aftermath of the collapse of the Soviet Union, and in fact at the termination of bipolar system, scholars and policymakers in the West sought to find a replacement for the post-Cold War system, and great efforts were made with an aim to stabilize and define continuation of the hegemonic Western-oriented system. Nevertheless, the inefficiency of such a unipolar system and rejection of other world powers very soon proved that there was no room for hegemony of a superpower. Therefore, Western scholars and theoreticians, especially in the United States, by presenting other theories, such as the end of history of Francis Fukuyama, the clash of civilization of Samuel Huntington, tried to further underline the Western sovereignty and hegemony and see the world from a Western domineering and hegemonic perspective. However, now after more than 2 decades since the termination of the bipolar system, the world is still in its transitional period. Among these developments, what was ignored by Western scholars was in fact the movement of Imam Khomeini in the early 1960s in Iran, and finally the victory of the Islamic Revolution in 1979 with its slogan of neither East nor West, only the Islamic Republic, and the ever-increasing consistency and strength of the newly born religio-political system despite the tendencies of the hegemonic power. I have personally witnessed these developments and believe that such a phenomenon has left great effects and would continue to do so in the future world order. The movement not only destroyed the several thousand-year-old monarchical autocracies in Iran, but left great repercussion in the region and seriously challenged the hegemonic system left over from the Westphal Treaty. The Islamic Revolution not only became triumphant over the oppressive monarchical regime, but launched a world movement for crashing the world dominant systems by relying on vigilance and uprising of the oppressed and tyrannized nations. With regard to what was very shortly discussed and due attention to the event and developments in the world of Islam, the Third World, and even the developed world, and indicative of the awakening and uprising of popular masses and the blows dealt on the body of the hegemonic systems and the region repeated failure of the hegemonic powers in their confrontation with vigilant nations, it is observed that the reason for the long-lasting period of transition in the aftermath of the Cold War and lack of success of the hegemonic big powers in the formation and stabilization of new systems compatible with their tendencies and plans made by Western policymakers and thinkers was a result of the emergence of new anti-hegemonic movements and subsequently the victory of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. Such movements have been embraced and expanded in an uncontrollable manner with an increasing velocity, and all the efforts of the hegemonic powers for halting them have backfired and resulted in further authority and vigilance of the oppressed and tyrannized nations. Meanwhile, it has caused a further plunge of hegemonists in their own designed and structured quagmires. For this reason, it could be asserted that the period of sovereignty of the world arrogant powers and their regional puppets, especially in the Islamic world, has reached to its end, and the world will witness the turn of a new page in the history of the international developments and new criteria and standards in international relations. Number one, the world community is witnessing a non-stop trend in the formation and array of
Close up by 2 minutes.
2 minutes, yes.
Okay.
The community is witnessing a non-stop trend in the formation and array of two camps vis-a-vis each other, in one of which domineering governments and their lackeys are present, and in the other nations and social groups, and in the other nations and social groups and governments emerged from within the masses who have launched their struggle against the hegemonic system and are expanding its dimension. In other words, such a trend could be interpreted as an encounter between the two domineering and counter-domineering camps, each of which has its own characteristics and groupings and has created new definitions of international relations and is seeking different goals. To my view, no longer we'll have a system of bipolarity, multipolarity, and something like that. But there is a vertical relationship On one camp, there are people, the masses, who are gathering and enlightened to their own faith, and in the other camp, there are domineering states who are trying to use their own domination in the world, but no longer they are able to continue such domination. At the end, I think that the verses of Quran who says that eventually the people and the masses, the oppressed, will prevail. نريد أن نمن على الذين استضعفوا في الأرض ونجعلهم أئمة ونجعلهم الوارثين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
جزاك الله خيرا.